Okay, hey everyone. Thanks for hopping in the chat, and welcome to the Suave Stream. So a little bit of a kind of different approach today. So just to kind of recap, we were working on a voice-based controller for Warzone or really any video game. But we'll get there. Where our goal was to be able to use like Alexa, Google Assistant, stuff like that, to be able to execute actions that will actually affect the game on my desktop. So doing a whole bunch of real-time stuff, learning about making Alexa skills and Google Actions and chatbots and stuff like that, and we will most certainly get there. One of the challenges we ran into with that project was that none of the video games accept virtual input, which is what we were trying to do, where essentially we had a server that the skill and action are talking to. That server then sends WebSocket, over WebSocket connection, information down to an app, a UWP app running on my desktop, that would then take that and then use key injection to virtualize input. Works great in all sorts of scenarios, but doesn't work in video games that actually directly take USB input, meaning that you need an actual USB keyboard or a USB game controller, or Bluetooth technically, to be able to actually execute actions in games. So what we did is we went and ordered an Arduino Leonardo, which is one of the, newer, it's many years old now, but one of the newer form factors of Arduino that actually enables USB directly. So those should come in Wednesday here. Their shipment's a little bit delayed, but we should get them Wednesday. They're already shipped, which means that we might not be able to use them on Wednesday's stream. We might still be working on what we're going to work on today. But next Sunday we'll be trying to wrap that up and actually start to scale it out, put it in different environments as well, and that'll be really fun. But I didn't really want to work on that project today. This whole week has been kind of insane here in the U.S. Around police violence and injustice that's been happening, and especially around systemic racism. And there's protests everywhere. Protests have turned to riots in some places. People are angry. I'm angry. Trying to figure out what I can really do. I've never really been put in a scenario like others have, where I've had conflicts with police or anything like that. I've most certainly had interactions with police, but I'm very privileged to be a white dude who doesn't really have to deal with that racism at all. So one of the things that I can do is try to spread awareness and help teach people what they can do as well. So beyond actually partaking in protests and being there and letting the black community and beyond know that I'm with them too, I figured I could try to use some of my skills here and our stream to teach others how to build technology that might be able to help. So one of the important things to do in scenarios like this is to call up your reps at your local government, your state government, your federal government, and let them know what you want to have done, and for us to be able to talk about it as we go too. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to work on a little bit of a different project, but we're going to put the Warzone voice controller stuff aside for now, and instead we're going to be building some stuff with virtual assistants and chatbots and all that. Same scope, all .NET, all C#, but instead we're actually going to be building something to let anyone just ask what their local rep's info is, and we want to be able to go grab that, provide all that information to them, and make it easy and accessible in plenty of different ways, which again sort of falls into what we've been trying to do even with the Warzone controller and with all these projects in the virtual assistant space in general is, just make things more accessible and use the virtual assistants for what they're good for. So we're going to start building this today. We're going to start with a brand new project from scratch. I really only started thinking about it like yesterday, in terms of like what I could do. So, join in the chat, ask questions as we go. Let me know what you're thinking. What other things we can be putting into this that would be as useful as well, or other applications we can do to sort of provide any sort of assistance or support in these sort of absolute garbage times that we're in this whole year in general, and especially this last week. So here's the plan. We're gonna start just like we do with all of our projects on this channel, and we're gonna draw a diagram for the architecture here, and then we're gonna spin up a GitHub repository. All of this is gonna be open source. We're gonna build the entire thing on stream, so you can also learn how to build this type of thing yourself. But essentially, what we're gonna do, as I'm also drinking coffee to wake up, is we need an API that we're going to be using to serve as our endpoints for these different virtual assistants. So we need to be able to take communications from Alexa, from Google Assistant, from different chatbot environments we want to talk to, and we can centralize all that stuff and share as much code between them in our single API. And then we also need to go and talk to some of the different like Civic Information Apis. I have some open here from Google that seem to be pretty easy to use. There are others out there as well, but I'll probably use the Google ones. They're also used by like change.org. I think vote.org uses it as well, because you can get more than just like your local reps info. You can get like voter info or candidate info as a voter as well. But anyway, so here's what we're going to do. Let's say like we've got each of these different assistants. Like if this is Alexa, in my beautiful mouse handwriting, this is Google Assistant, and I think what is also going to be useful in this scenario would be a Twitter bot as well. So this is Twitter. Each of these are going to send information to our API. So this is what we're going to be mostly writing in its entirety. This is where each of these is going to send requests to us, and then we got to do something with it. So when we receive those requests, we need to process the natural language, or at least like handle what was processed already, and then talk back and forth between the Civic Information API. So if we put this sort of box over here, Civic API, which has all sorts of awesome info, and I'll go show you what's in there. I just started looking at it, but it's pretty cool. So we send requests there, get info back, and then we are going to map it back here. So our API needs to be able to handle the inputs from the different virtual assistant platforms or bot platforms that we're going to deploy to, understand what we're trying to ask for, and then send information back and forth to the Civic API, map that back to responses that we're going to send down to each of the other platforms. So that's the main responsibility of what we're going to be doing and building in this API. But we also need to design the language model and also choose what features we want. So in general, what we can do is take a look at what like information we can actually access from the Civic Information API and see what we can really get out of it. So this is actually part of Google's APIs. It's called the Civic Information API. You can learn all about it in this URL, developerslikeGoogle.com/civic-information. So it has all sorts of things. It has information about your local reps from the national, federal level, all the way down to your local government, if they have that info. I think in some areas they might not have all the local government info indexed or stuff like that, but you'll see I'll go hit a test request that I have set up, and we can take a look at all the data we'll have access to, because they have a whole try it out tool with their API Explorer too, which is cool. So that means we can get the president's information, the vice president's information, our local governor, senators, reps from the House of Representatives. I think you can even go down to like mayor and other elected officials as well. And you can choose what levels you want to filter to. But they also do contain information for voting. So like the Voter Information Project uses these APIs. Change.org uses them as well. So over in this other tab, this is where we can start to work with this, right? This is our API docs. This is where we can start to care about it. So as an example here, we see that we just need to make an HTTP GET request, and we have a whole bunch of optional things. Technically, all of it's optional, which is interesting. But you need to provide an address. That can be like your full address, and I've also tested with zip codes, which is what we're going to focus on using, I think. And then include the offices so that you know like if it's the full office or an official, and then you can choose like levels and roles that you want to filter by. So if you include none of these, we're going to get all of them, and then you can start to filter down. We can also get all of them and then filter down in our code behind as well. They show us the response structure. There's no request body. All of these are just URL params because it's an HTTP GET request. But you can see the types of things we get. We get the different divisions, the different offices, and then the officials within them. And so these are probably the ones that we're going to care about, which means we might be able to set this this property here of include offices to false. But for now, let's take a look over here on the right side where we have this try this API, and I'll full screen it here to make it a little easier to see. You can even zoom in a little bit. Cool. So address, we can put in whatever info we want. I can put in my local zip code. We can put in some other zip code. I'm going to put in one of the ones for Boston, and we'll just send that. And when we execute it, you can see that we hit this request. We need to actually get an API key, which we'll do later. Now let's look at the response here. I wish I could make this side a little bigger. So we get the normalized input, meaning that we only sent it a zip code, but we found out that it was Boston, Mass, which is what the zip code is for. And then we can look at the different divisions, and then we get into the offices, like we said. So the different divisions, we have the United States, that's our federal government. Massachusetts is our state government. We have Suffolk County, that's the county that Boston is within. And then we have the Boston City. And then we now get into the different offices. So we have the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States. We get into the U.S. Senator that represents our region, the Governor, the Lieutenant Governor, the Mass State Treasurer, Mass State Auditor, Mass Secretary of the Commonwealth, Attorney General, Suffolk County Sheriff, and then we even get our Boston City Councilors, the Boston Mayor as the different offices. But now this is where we can get into the individuals so that we know who we're supposed to talk to and also how to contact them. It's in the same order of like federal government all the way down to local. So because we didn't put any filters, we get all the way from Donald J. Trump, the current president of the United States, the address of the White House, the party they belong to, and also the phone number you can call, and any URLs, photo URLs too, which is really interesting. And we might actually make use of these in these screen-based devices, but if I copy that and put it into the browser like this, we can see Donald Trump's like face shot or whatever you call it. Headshot, that's the normal one. And also like what channels, right? So if we can get the Facebook channel or page, and you can sub URL to that. Same thing with Twitter and the YouTube, stuff like that. And then we get to Mike Pence. We get the Vice President of the United States. If we keep scrolling down, we get our local senator, which is Edward Markey, what party he's in again. We get the phone number we can call. We keep going down. We get Elizabeth Warren, who's another senator. Same thing. We get Charlie Baker, who's the governor, and we can keep going down all the way into the sort of different levels, all the way down to the local stuff. So depending on who you really need to contact at a given time, we might just want to surface all of this up front, or we can start with just the basics of like your local senator or the governor. The governor might be a really good sort of start, simply because a lot of the sort of police violence we're seeing is often controlled at the state level and then the city level. So we need to be able to contact those people first, and then we can also scale up. But I think that the first thing we need from someone in order to start requesting this data is going to be their address in one way or another, and I think we should stick to zip code, because when using a voice interaction, I don't want to have to say my whole address. Like for example, if I said 101 Summer Street, and then I might not know exactly what Summer Street that is. We got to get all the way into the city and the state and the zip code. So if we can start just from the zip to get the representatives of that area, even if it's technically might be a little off, I don't know if there's like cross segments of zip codes and who represents them in certain areas, but at least at the like state government level, that should be fine. And in theory, the federal level as well. So like the governor is always going to be the governor. If you're in that zip code, you're in that state. We know we have the confidence in those boundaries, but I just don't know if like there's crossover of like local government legislators that might have like split a zip code or something like that. So let's start by actually spinning up our Alexa skills and starting to think about that language model, and then we'll go create our new project on GitHub and start spinning things up. So I want to start today, and we can always grow this into other channels as well. If you want to see this in other channels beyond the ones I'm going to outline, put them in chat, because we can probably get to them pretty quickly once we have our scaffolding set up. But I'm going to build an Alexa skill. I'm going to build a Google action, and I'm going to build at least a Twitter bot. And with that, we can probably also get like a web-based chat bot that we can iframe, and I can hand that out in chat. You guys can put that wherever else you want, and we can sort of spread this a little bit if we need to. So those are the three I'm going to focus on, or four-ish. I'm going to focus on. If you think of other channels, if you think that a Facebook Messenger bot would be useful, or an SMS bot or something like that, let me know in chat, and we'll go from there. But also, just like with every stream we do here, feel free to ask questions as we go. Participate in chat. ask any technical questions, ask any questions about the plan for the project. If you ever come in late, totally fine, just to ask to be caught up. And eventually we'll end up spinning up bots for all that stuff anyway. Okay, cool. So let's start by building an Alexa skill. So I'm already signed into my Alexa developer console here, and I'm just going to go create a new skill. I want the name to be consistent, depending on, or I should say, no matter what channel we're on. So we should make sure we have like at least the same name on Google, same Twitter handle or name at least to be found, and the Alexa skill. So I'm just going to call this find my reps, or rep. And we'll stick with custom. I've gone over this a few times in the channel now, just in terms of like, what these different types are for the types of skills you can build. Custom basically means you can define your own language model, you define your own code that's going to run it to handle all the inputs and outputs. Flash briefing means you can ask what's latest in the news. Smart home is for turning on devices. Music and video are for playing media. Meetings and education are sort of like specific use cases. So we're going to stick with custom because we want to define the way that people talk to our skill and handle all of the inputs and outputs with our own code. And we're going to use .NET, which means that we're going to provision our own. I'm going to throw it into a ASP.NET Core API, and we'll put it on Azure just real quick. So you can also choose to use Alexa hosted, meaning that you can actually edit the code in the browser either with Node or Python, which is interesting. But we're going to host our own. We're doing our own thing. We're doing it all .NET on the Microsoft stack for now. And yeah, so let's create our skill. And we're going to choose to create it from scratch, meaning that we're going to define our language model the way we want to. So with Find My Rep, we start with basically nothing in terms of the intents. We get some built-in ones. Fallback, if someone says something that our skill doesn't understand. Cancel if someone says cancel. Stop if someone says stop. Help if they say help. And navigate home is for screen-based devices. It's not really something you necessarily have to worry about. But we need to add a new intent for actually asking for your local rep by zip code. So let's create an intent that just says rep zip code intent. And we're going to create it. Now we need to enter some utterances. So these are some of the ways that people might actually ask for their local rep. It might just be the zip code. If you hit the welcome message and all we need to ask for is the zip code to look it up, that's fine. But if they also what's called a one-shot, meaning asking directly into a specific intent, we need to be able to handle a little bit more language there. So we can't just make this a zip code that you can say. We need to add a little bit of other phrases to capture ways that people might also just talk to the device. Some people talk to their Alexa devices more commandy-ish. Other people talk to it more kind of like it's a person and have more of a conversation. We need to be able to capture both of those scenarios. So we've got our rep zip code intent. Let's start by adding our first slot. We're going to call this zip code, and we're going to add it, and we'll get to defining the type later. So we've got our zip code slot. What are my reps at zip code? Reps at zip code. Representatives at zip code. And we can start with a few, and we can always add to these later as well. But I think this is probably a few to cover us now. Other than maybe like who are my reps zip code. I'll add a few more. I live at zip. I live in zip. I think that's fine. So now we need to define the type for our zip code. This is very important when using slots, meaning that we need to get the actual value out of this, and the way that we tell Alexa how to process it is defined by the type that we give it. So for example, if I choose to define zip code as an Amazon.actor type, Alexa's going to be listening for me asking like reps at Bradley Cooper, and that's not useful. So we need to define either one that already exists. So there's none for zip code or anything like that, but there are numbers, and I think we can use that. How many digits are zip code? 5. So we need to define a number here, and we can go from there. So if I say 01887 or 02110 or 03062 or 03062, depending on how I say it, we want to be able to capture all of those as the zip code number. And it also means that we can get some type safety around it too, because it's going to be a number. We can assume that it's something like that. but then in our code that we're going to write, we're going to need to add some extra sort of safety and validation around that slot type. That way, if someone says something with a digit, it's technically a number, but we want to handle it differently. We want to make sure that it's a real zip code. So we can handle all that validation on our end when we write the code for it. So I'm going to save this model and build it. And while this is building, let's go actually spin up our API. So I'm going to create a new repository here on GitHub, and we'll call this Find My Rep. The description is also nice. That GitHub repo name is available. It's awesome. Oh, I guess it's only under mine, and I haven't made that yet, so that makes sense. Never mind. I'm dumb. Description: virtual assistant and chatbot driven API for finding information about your local government representatives. We'll make it public. I always like to initialize my repo with a README and git ignore just to get ahead of some of the stuff. This is my process for going through it anyway. But of course, other people will go build the entire project, get it scaffolded, and then create the repo from it. I usually like to start from GitHub. So anyway, I'm going to start it with a git ignore from Visual Studio because we're using .NET. We want to make sure that we're ignoring all the other files that C# project or any .NET project or any project from Visual Studio is going to add. So there's a .vs folder, we have the bin folder and object folders for the CLR in between stuff and the actual output. And I'm going to make it an MIT license. Do whatever you want with this thing. I don't really care. I want people to be able to build this and use it and put it in other places. That way we kind of make it easier to learn about your local reps in conversational ways. So we have our repository. I'm going to clone it. And, oh, there's an open in Visual Studio button. Let's do this. Open pick an app. Uh-oh. Never mind. I'm going to clone it using GitHub Desktop. So I've talked about this before on stream. I'm going to continue to use the UI for cloning stuff and handling all the Git things. It's basically just a lower barrier to entry for developers, so people who are new to development on the channel can understand how to use these tools. This is GitHub's desktop UI for managing all of your Git things and your whole repository. So we'll be using this instead of the CLI for now. Totally up to you how you want to use your Git commands and everything else. But anyway, we've got our repo set up, so now we can go into Visual Studio and create a new project. So I'm going to create a new ASP.NET Core web app. I'm not going to handle too much of the sort of over-architecting here that I do in other projects that you might see. But for now, where is it? Didn't I just put it here? Oh, yeah, up top. We're gonna focus on just putting it all in a single project. We can scaffold it, we can add tests to it later, we can still handle dependency injection and everything else and sort of those best practices all we want. But for now, we're going to be working mostly within the same project and keeping it simple. So we're gonna call this the Find My Rep project. We can call this .api. That way, if we add other things, we can handle it. Did I just click back? Did I mess up? What just happened there? Oh my gosh. Alright, cool. I kept the same stuff. Create. Alright, cool. So we're going to create this as an API project. This is going to add a little bit of scaffolding to it, which is fine. But for now, we'll get it spun up like this, and then I'm going to go through showing you the process of the things I normally do with these projects. So now in Visual Studio, we've got our API project spun up. I'm going to go ahead and delete this controller that it made for us. Delete that. Let's keep the Solution Explorer open. And I'm going to add some of the dependencies that I like to use. So we need to add Swashbuckle for Swagger. That way we can view our API and test it pretty easily without having to use Postman or anything like that. And then we'll also add the Alexa Net Sdks. Shout out to Tim Hewer and Stephen Pears for working on that all the time. I use it every single day. So let's start by adding those. Let's see. We want Swashbuckle. And we need ASP.NET Core. And that's going to add these other ones. You can see like the .swagger, .swaggergen, .swagger UI. If you use this one, you're going to get all of those, plus a little bit of other stuff for doing the API descriptions that enable Swashbuckle to actually generate the sort of self-documenting things on your API. Cool, so we'll install this. Now, we've run into issues before with setting up Swashbuckle where we need to use the Newtonsoft JSON. Newtonsoft. This is the one we want. I think so. Yeah, and this got spun up as a 3.0, so we're going to install the 3.0.3 package instead of the latest. Sweet. So now in our startup, we can go and start adding the Swashbuckle stuff. I always grab the docs here because I can never remember the things I need to do in setup. Don't need oh, this is the wrong one. I need swashbuckle.asp.NET Core. That's the one. Yeah, so right below add MVC, I'm gonna want to grab this. Actually, just add it there. I'm gonna need to pull in the namespace. Open API info. Come on. There we go. And then this is the find my rep API. There's a couple other things we need to do here to tell it that we're actually using it. We need to call useSwagger and the useSwagger UI. So we can do that down here after we call use endpoints. And we'll rename this to find my rep API. Cool. So now we actually need some controllers. That way we can even do anything. And there's also one more thing we need to do here. We need to do services.addMVC, and then there's add Newtonsoft JSON. So that's what's going to tell us to, or tell our server that we want to use Newtonsoft for our serializing and deserializing of our JSON rather than using the new built-in ones that started shipping with ASP.NET Core 3. So this we need to explicitly add, and then this will help Swagger out with actually defining everything and pulling things in and going forth with issues that we've seen with like Google and Dialogflow models and stuff like that. So I'm going to start by creating a new controller for the Alexa endpoints. So we're going to call this the Alexa controller, and then we'll create new controllers for each of the other channels that we want to support. That way we can separate like the models they use, the logic that they need, and then we can abstract stuff that's shared between them. But this is going to inherit from controller base. And we're going to give it a route of /API/controller. I guess I don't need that first slash. Cool. Now, Alexa sends requests over HTTP post, so we need to have an endpoint for that. And then we can do public async task of skill response. Not sure why it doesn't like that, but we'll get there. And we'll call this handle Alexa request. And they send over, oh, I didn't add the thing. Hold on. Well, this sends over a skill request, and we'll call this skill request. I totally forgot. We still need to add the Alexa.net SDK. So let's do that. We just need the base one. There's a whole bunch of other ones that we can use too if you're doing things with extra security checking, if you're using APL, which is Alexa presentation language for screen-based devices. If you're doing the management things, you can automate using the Alexa APIs like creating and updating and all that of your skills, but we just need the base stuff for handling requests and responses. Cool, so now that that's installed, we should be able to get these models. So basically this endpoint needs to take in a skill request and send back a skill response. So let's start by just returning, there's a response builder class that also comes with this, but we can just say tell hello world. So this is a good way for us to basically validate that everything's up and running. And now if we run this, we should be able to go to our Swagger documentation, hit this endpoint and see the response, and then we can start to publish it to Azure. That way Alexa can talk to it. So we can go to /Swagger. Here's our UI that was set up for us by Swashbuckle. I'm just going to send the defaults because we don't really care what's sent up. And we have a 500 because we failed to do something. I feel like I just went through this with the Warzone controller. I thought adding the Newtonsoft JSON stuff fixed this. Parameter type. Maybe I'm missing something here. I'll pull this back up. I'm just going to look this up real quick. Argument out of range exception. We're just going to take this first one. Oh, no, this is my fault. You do need to send an actual request type. So let's go grab one from Alexa. Whoops, guess I don't really need that one. So in the Alexa Developer Console, when we go to test, we can turn on testing and then say open find my rep. Oh, we need an endpoint first, otherwise it's going to yell at me. All right, let's keep going. We'll get to the point where we can test a little bit later. So what I'm going to do is just right-click, publish this to a new Azure app service. That way we can just get it spun up. So we're going to do create new app service. We're going to create the profile. We're going to choose from my stuff. We'll call this find my rep API. We're going to put this under the Suave Streams hosting plan. We can spin up a new one, and we're going to make this free for now, and we don't need application insights, so this is fine. And I think we're good on the name, unless we can just call this find my rep. Let's try it. Alright, while this is spinning up, assuming we can get that name, it means we can go set up the endpoint in the Alexa Developer Console. So over in the Build tab, to do that, we go to the Endpoint section here. And you can choose to host an Alexa skill as either a Lambda on AWS, where you just give it the resource name, or you can do it over HTTPS, which is what we're going to do. So you enter the URL. In this case, it's going to be findmyrep.azurewebsites.net. And then it's going to be /API/Alexa, because that's the endpoint that we gave it, and it is a subdomain SSL cert that they check. So now when we save this, we can go to test, and now we should be able to say open find my rep. This isn't going to work because we haven't actually finished deploying yet, but we can take this input now, and when this is done, we can run this locally, now use the Swagger endpoint, and I'll go update that local setting, and we can pass in this as the response or the request body. So now we get that hello world output as our plain text in our speech. So we have the ability now to handle inputs and outputs. Let's see where our findmyrep.azurewebsites.net. Looks like we need to actually publish this now that it's been created, and then we can try to hit it from Alexa and basically validate that everything made it up. Then we can start to build it out. We'll start to actually handle the lookups. We'll build a provider to go do the search against those Google Civic Information APIs, and then we can go from there. Okay, so we have our URL. I can now go to /Swagger here. If we take that same request info, we can pass it in up here as well. and make sure that we get our response. So now even in our public URL, findmyrep.azurewebsites.net, we have our output speech returning, which means that over here, now if I open it, I should get a hello world response from Alexa. Cool. So some important things to note. Yeah, come on, get that out of this chat. I don't want this spam in here. Come on. With one important thing to note about doing Alexa development is any device that you have that's registered to the same account as your developer account, just the same email, can also start testing things once it's turned on to develop. So I've got all sorts of devices over here. I'm going to unmute this Echo Spot, and I can say, Alexa, open Find My Rep.
Hello world.
And we get the hello world response from it. So we can start to test on real devices as well as testing in the simulator as we go. Cool. Now let's actually go see what we can do about hitting the Civic Information Api, validate that we get all that good stuff, and then we're going to try to basically process our actual intent and go from there and start to do the lookups. So we have the documentation here. We know we can send it. What we do need though is an API key. And I want to see if there are official SDKs for this, although I really struggle with some of Google's .NET SDKs because it's all built around their protobuf stuff. But let's see. Google Civic API C#. Because I mean, most of these are just auto-generated and then like tweaked a little bit. Let's see if we can't get something like this to work. Okay, I mean let's give it a shot. If worst case, we'll just back it out and do it over HTTP calls. But what we can do is go to our NuGet feed and hit this. Now we can grab that Civic Info v2 SDK and install it. Cool. All right. What I'm going to do is add a new class here for a data provider. I'll do it in a subfolder here called providers. And we can create an interface here, and we can call this our Google Civic Info Provider. I want to abstract this just so that we can handle dependency injection and testing if we need to. So I'm going to also create an interface for it. Interface. And that's our Google Civic Info Provider. So basically, this interface is what we're going to actually use in our controllers. So we can actually set that up now. If we have a private, read-only Google Civic Info Provider. Come on. It's not giving me my normal goodness. There we go. Civic Info Provider. And now we can generate a constructor that takes this in. So I can control period on it, give us this generate constructor, coolest shortcut in the world. And now we just also need to make sure that this class is implementing that interface. Great. Now to make sure it's actually injected in our startup under these services, we can say services.addScoped, and we can say an Google Civic Info Provider is a Google Civic Info Provider. So doing this using the built-in ASP.NET Core dependency services allows us to pass in this interface as our type into constructors, and then when we run it, because we're adding controllers here, when we're generating the actual Alexa controller class behind the scenes, it's going to be able to go look through our registered services in that scope and say, oh, we've got an Google Civic Info Provider. Well, that's one of these, so let's go new up one of those and pass it in as the actual provider. So that way we can actually make some of those API calls. Awesome. So what we need to do is look at the actual models we get back here. and we need to spin up a new one of the services. So for now, I'm going to create a public async task. We'll add a return type to this later, and we'll say get local civic info, and we'll take in a zip code. We might be able to actually inject the Google service as well, but for now I'm going to new it up. Civic service equals new civic, what did they call it here? Civic info service. So we're going to want one of these. There we go. Civic service dot API key. We need to be able to set some of this stuff. Wonder if we can set it here. Or I wonder if there's a different way we're supposed to handle this. How do I set my API key? I also need to get an API key, which I will do off camera and keep it in a local file. API client library. Simple API key is probably what we're going to need. Then how do I use it? Oh, we need to pass in an initializer, that's why. And then we give it the app name and the API key. Cool, so we'll get to that because I'm going to need to actually go spin that up, and I don't want everyone on stream seeing me create my API keys and stuff for people to hijack it. We're going to make sure it's get ignored and put in app settings. So I'm going to call this, we're going to create a new instance here for app settings dot production .json, and we're also going to create a new, we're going to add this to our get ignore, which we can do either in our team explorer. I think there's tools for it. Go to changes. I'm going to ignore this item, so even when we push it to GitHub, people won't be able to see it, and that's where we'll put our actual production keys. Cool, so that's get ignored. We should probably actually commit this stuff. So let's just say initial project and Alexa hello world example. Okay, so assuming that we can get some info passed into here from our app settings, we're going to be able to spin up this new info service. That means that we need to have that configuration information injected as well. So to do that, I'm going to go create a new folder here for models, and then we're going to create a subfolder in here just in case we need other models as well. That's just called configuration. Now basically what we need is we need that app name and our API key for Google to be able to be configurable in our app settings and to be able to be consumed here in our provider. So we're going to create a new class for it, and then I'll show you how options injection works in ASP.NET Core. We'll call this Google API settings, and we just need to add two properties here. We have the API key and the app name. So we need to represent this in our app settings. So for example, if we go to our root one, do it here, we can say Google API settings is this, and it's going to be an object, and this has API key, and that's that, and we have app name, and that's also a string. So now in our production one, we can do the same thing to basically override it, and this is where we'll put in the actual stuff once I go generate it. And that way this also won't end up in GitHub. So if you want to go run this yourself, you just need to go get an app name and an API key from the Google Civics Information API and go from there. So now that we have this, we can inject it into our provider. So what I can do is create a private read-only version of our Google API settings, pull in the namespace, and we'll call it API settings. And we need to generate a constructor for it, but I don't want to use the automatic one because we're not actually going to inject this class. We're going to inject an iOptions of that class. So that's from the Microsoft Extensions Options namespace, and this takes in the generic type that we can pass in. We'll call this settings. Now this has the ability to pull out that actual object from the dot value. So now we can get the dot value here. You can see that's a Google API settings that we pull out. So assuming that we've registered it, then we can grab it. Now we need to tell our app what this should be. So we need to be able to tell it to go grab from our app settings and all that. We can do that in the startup, similar to where we added this add scoped, where we can say services.configure, and we can configure a Google API settings. Oops, my Google Assistant just woke up on my phone from me talking to it. Okay, and then we need to say that we can get this from the configuration, which is a local property here, .getSection, and then it needs a name. Luckily, we named it the same as our Google API settings class, so we can use the name of accessor or whatever you call it in C#. So now we're basically telling our service, configure the options for Google API settings by getting the local configuration section at this name, which happens to be right here. So we'll get this object, it'll initialize it, and inject it into the iOptions, which means that now we can get it here when we run this, and then when we inject this, it'll crawl the dependency tree. We'll have everything set up, and we can start to use it. So now to initialize this Civic Info service here, we need to pass in that initializer like we just saw in the documentation. So this has an overload in the constructor. You can see there's two. There's an empty one, which probably won't work, and we have the initializer. So we're going to create a new base client service .initializer class, and this takes an API key and an app name. And this is going to be pulled from our API settings .api key, and application name is going to be API settings .app name. Great. Now let's see what we can actually do here. We want to get what things do we have? What can we do with this service? We want to get representatives. That's the API we want to use. Get representative info by address. That is exactly what we want. From a single address, but this doesn't seem to take in anything. Let's go read the docs, see if there's something else we're missing here. So we know it's going to return a representative's resource, presumably. Info by address request. Alright, let's start here. Generate the service. Version. Where is that? Representatives. Alright, so this is a representatives resource. Info by address. Oh, this returns the request type? I don't really understand what do I do with this now? Yeah, and it just takes an address, right? I mean, this is the request object that we were looking at. Just trying to figure out how we actually execute it, because it seems like this method is just returning. This is returning a request. It's not actually looking anything up. Unless we actually need to execute it from the request. Oh, okay. So their request objects are actually like executable. Okay, so that's fine. So we need to actually set the address property. Hopefully this is not read-only. Sweet. We're going to set this to the zip code, and then we can say var response equals request.execute async, because we've got an async task here. Should put this on another thread, and we'll await it. Now this response is going to be a representative info response, so that's what we're going to end up probably wanting to return here. Representative resource response. Responsne. Representatives resource response. Is that the type? What is this type? Representative info response. If only I took time to actually read. Alright, cool. So now down here we can return response. So I think this will handle the error cases as well. Maybe not. So we might need to handle the error cases either in the provider, or we can do it in the controller. Basically, like if this goes wrong, we just need to be able to return a response to the end user that's cleaner. So maybe we should keep that in our controller where we're handling that. Sweet. Now, we have our ability to call this. We need to now actually handle it in our Alexa controller. So let's start talking about how we handle these responses. In Alexa, there's different request types. There's two that we really need to worry about. There's the launch request, so that's what is happening when I say open find my rep. And then we also have intent requests, which is what happens when it hits on a specific intent. So in our welcome message, when someone opens a skill, we should be able to tell them what they can do, what they should say. And then from there, when we hit the intent, we're going to use the provider, get the resources, map it back to a reasonable response, and return it from there. And so like I said, we can start just by looking up your governor or your mayor and using that as our default response. But then maybe we can take it a little bit further, give you all of the info, or say like, okay, we found your information. Do you want to talk to the mayor, the governor, your senator, or whatever? And then maybe we just go from there. So for now, let's handle our welcome message, and we'll say if skill request.get request type equals type of launch request. All right, so that's the one that happens when we open it. We're going to want to prompt the user to say something else. So we're going to return response builder.ask and say welcome to find my rep. You can find information, contact information, and details about your representatives from federal to local. Just say your zip code. And then we need to pass in another null here, which is the reprompt. So now otherwise, if the skill request type is an intent request, then now we need to actually get the intent out. So we can cast this now to an intent request, and then we need to be able to pull out the name of the intent, any slots we have, and stuff like that, and start to do the lookup. So we can say var intent request equals skill request. I think it's this inner one. Or is it the whole thing as intent request? No, yeah, it's the inner request object there. Cool. So let's say if intent request equals the name of our intent, so we're going to go back over to the Alexa console, make sure we get the exact name of rep zip code intent. Then we can assume that we're going to have that slot value. So let's get the, oh, I can't just save the whole request. .intent.name is the rep zip code request. Then we can say zip code equals intent request .intent.slots, and this is a dictionary value, so we can say zip code because that's the name of the slot we had. So now let's go get the output response from the Google API. So we can say civic response equals await civic info provider, and we need to go actually put this method on our interface. So I'm going to copy just the signature of the method here without any of the accessors, and we'll put it in here. We need to pull in the namespaces, We can even put in a comment on this as well. Get the information about your local Civic providers by zip code. So now we should be able to access this, get local Civic info, and we'll pass in that zip code, which should inherently be a string, although we might need to type, oh no, we need to get .value. There we go. Cool. So now let's try to just build a simple response based off of the information we provide. Maybe we can just look up whoever the first official is. If we say civic response.officials dot we can get first or default. Like, let's just grab the first one. First official. And now let's just build a response here. So we're going to say response builder.ask. You can do string interpolation with that $sign in front of the quotes, which means we can start to just add variables in this string. Here's what I found. And then we can say first official dot name. And you can call them at first official dot phones dot first or default. And I think that's a list of strings, right? Yeah, it's a string. Okay. And then we can also say you can ask for another zip code's reps. That way they can just keep going, right? We don't want to necessarily stop them and make them have to reopen the skill. So that's great. Now, some other scenarios we have to handle. We need to say if the intent request.intent name is the Amazon.help intent, because that's a required thing that we need to support. And I forgot to do the .name here. Then we need to basically tell the users what they can ask, sort of remind them what they can do. So we'll do a response builder.ask, and we'll say here with the find my rep skill, you can ask for your local reps info by zip code. Null. And now in these other scenarios, if it's not one of the ones we expect, or it's not some other request type, then we can always just return, and I need to return these like a good person would do. We can return response builder.tell for now. You said something I don't understand yet. Try something else later. We can always clean up these scenarios as well as we go. Cool. So let's give this a shot. What I'm going to do is test it locally first to make sure we get everything we need. But first I need to actually go generate our API keys for that Google Civics API. So I'm going to do that on my other monitor. That way you all don't see the API keys I'm creating. And then we'll come back over and actually try it out. But for now, I'm also going to commit this stuff too. So let's do that, just using the Team Explorer. Setting up API calls to Google service and Alexa responses. Yeah, save all that good stuff. All right, let me spin up a new tab here. I'm just gonna pull this one over here, so you guys don't really have to worry about it. What I need to do is figure out how I can actually add this with getting started, choosing an API key. So I need to go to the developer console. Is it one of these ones? Yeah, okay, so we need to go to the developer console. Alright, we're going to create a new project over here. We'll call this Find My Rep. It's creating the project. Shouldn't take too long to spin that up. Cool. Alright, now I guess I can pull this back over here for now. we need to see if we can grab the Civic Information API and enable it. Now I'm going to pull it over here just so none of you guys need to see the credentials we're spinning up. I'm going to create new credentials. Civic Information API. Alright. So I've got an API key now. I'm going to pull Visual Studio over just to edit that info. And paste that, find my rep. Cool. Alright, should be good to go. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is run it, but in order to run it and use my actual keys that I created, I need to run it against production, which we can edit in the launch settings or the project settings. I also want to change this to default URL when I launch it to Swagger. And then we need to just change from development to production. Production is also the default, I think, if you don't have any set, but you can also create custom environments for the ASP.NET Core environment, and then basically whatever environment we're running against with this environment variable, we're going to be pulling in those values from our settings. We do that in the startup automatically, but we can also, there's other custom things you can do here to pull in other options and settings, but let's make sure that this works. So I'm going to run this locally, and we're going to go over to the, don't need this, I don't need this, to the Alexa developer console and try to actually give one of those responses. So if I just say ask find my rep, what is my rep at 02110? Hopefully that hits the intent at least so we can get that request JSON. Alright, so we got the hello world response, which is good. You can see here we got our intent request, and we have the right intent, and we have the zip code. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to go over here to our local running one. We'll go to try it out, put it in there, and let's see if we get a response back. 500. Alright, let's debug it. In the Alexa controller, we're going to just start right from the beginning and run it again. Alright, stepping through, we know it's an intent request. We have the right intent name. We get the zip code, which should have the value of, oh, I typed in the wrong one. That'll do it. Ooh, this might be an issue with the number slot, because you'll notice I typed in 02110, but Alexa dropped it when using the number intent. I wonder how we can work around that. I'm sure other people have done it too, but we can think about that in a little bit. So maybe let's do this. Just for now, to validate the actual API calls, we can say if zipcode.length, zipcode.value.length is 4, then zipcode equals 0, zipcode.value equals, please don't be read-only. Alright, let's try that. That way, I mean, I don't know if this is a safe assumption or not, but basically if we only get 4 back, we should just pre-append the 0. Although I don't know if there are other zip codes that start with 2 zeros. We'll have to figure that out. But for now, let's just make sure our API call to the Civic Information API works. And we can go from there. So I'm just going to put a breakpoint down here. Let's see if we get that far. I'm going to take all this again, and we'll run it. We hit our breakpoint. We have our Civic response. We have officials. So let's let it run now. And I'm pretty sure it's going to say it's Donald Trump, right? Like, here's what I found, Donald J. Trump, and you can call him here. Cool. So now we just need to look up by the specific office So let's look at the response structure that we get back. Where did that go? Did I lose that test environment? Google Civic API. Then there's the try it out. Where did that try it out pane go? Yeah, this one. Okay. 02110. All right. So how do we find which one is the governor? So if we go down to officials, we need to go down a few levels. That's still reps and senators. Okay. So how do we know that he's our governor? Right, Charlie Baker's our governor. Do we need to look up? Is it matched to the office? I wonder if that's what, if we need to go from office, find that index. Oh yeah, official indices, right? So if we go to, we need to go from the office of governor, right? So governor of Massachusetts is what we need to look up, or we can find it by level, administrative area 1. Then we get the index from here, and then we can look it up. So let's do that. We know we have these values. This might be an enum we can use too. And I think we should add it here as part of our API calls that we can make just to make it clean. So let's say get local governor. And then we can make a private method for doing this call down here. Private async task of representative info response. Actually, why don't we just make this one, we can just call this, right? So we can say var response, oh shoot, yeah, there we go. Response equals await get local civic info from zip code, and now we need to find the mayor from the response. And at the end, we'll just return response for now to make sure we don't have any build errors. But we'll probably change the return type to be an official. Cool. So we can say var office equals response dot offices dot first or default, where the office, let's see, what was it called again? Levels contains administrative area 1. Levels contains that. I wonder if there's a const for that, but that's fine. Cool. So we can say if office is null, return null. Now we want to say var official equals response dot office, or we want to say response dot officials dot first or default. Actually, we can just get it by index, right? So let's say var official index equals office indices 0 if we have one, and then we can get officials at official index and return official. What is this complaining about? It's a list of longs? Let's just cast this bad boy. Alright, so officials are type official because that's what we're going to want to return. So we can get rid of this. And this is great. Now that we have this set up, if we can prove this works out well, we can do it for the other offices as well. If we just say get my local governor or get my mayor, that way we can make really refined searches as well for the different zip code searches. Instead of just all of them, I can say who's the governor of this zip code, who's the mayor of this zip code, and we can break it down like that. I think that would be really cool. So let's do this. We're going to go and add this to our interface now as well. Gets the governor's info for the given zip code. Now we do need to make sure that's not null when we're handling it in the Alexa controller. So instead of saying civic response, we're going to say governor equals await civic get governor get gov, and we're going to pass in the zip code value. Now if governor is null, we're going to want to return a different response. So we're going to say response builder.ask, and we can say I wasn't able to find anyone for that. Try asking something else. Otherwise, we can grab the governor's name and the governor's phone number. Let's run this. So I'm going to go grab this request again. Back to Swagger. Put that up here. Now we should get Charlie Baker's info and number. Perfect. Here's what I found. Charles D. Baker. You can call them at whatever. Anyone in chat want to know their governor's phone number real quick that we can try out other than mine? Just post your zip code in the chat. I promise not to dox you, or some other zip code. We can try it out. So what we should do now is I'm going to publish this to the API, and we're going to try it on Alexa. Solution Explorer. I guess it's right here. We can just boom, publish. So what we're probably going to want to do is actually make different intents. Or we can use the same intent and then have like an office one, but we might want to have different intents that use the same slot. All right, I'm going to try this over here. Actually, let's do it in the simulator first. Let's say open find my rep. Is this muted?
And details about your representatives from federal to local. Just say your zip code.
Okay. Now if I just say that same one, Boston zip code.
You said something I don't understand yet.
All right.
Try something else later.
We got fallback intent. It's interesting that it didn't find that as the right utterance, but let's try this. What is my rep at 02110?
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
That's right, we gotta reopen it. That's fine. You can actually just try this whole thing here.
Here's what I found. Charles D. Baker, and you can call them at 617-725-4005. You can ask for another zip code's reps.
Sweet. Not too bad. I mean, let's go try a different one. I'll try a New Hampshire one. So we can say, what's my rep at 03062? That's Nashua, New Hampshire.
You said something I don't understand yet.
We're outside.
Try something else later.
Let's do that again.
Here's what I found. Chris Sununu, and you can call them at 603-271-2121. You can ask for another zip code's reps.
Awesome. All right, here's what I think might be useful. If we just have this sort of generic request for like, what are all of my reps info, then we can list a few different ones out. We can do your governor, your mayor, your senator, and your rep. I think those might be useful. And then we can also add other intents for specific ones. So who's my governor at X? Who's the senator at X, and go from there. And then we'll also add their email and their phone number. And I think that'll be a good start. Also, we can start to use their images when we use the outputs for the screens as well. We can add cards and stuff, but I don't necessarily think we need to get there in today's stream or in this build. So this is good. Cool. So let's do this. Let's go add those different intents on the Alexa side. And then once we're done getting this sort of set up, we'll go do the same thing for Dialogflow and Google Assistant as well. We might need to set up some more models for that, though. So let's do a couple of these. We'll do governor zip code. Just say gov zip code intent. We'll create another one called senator zip code intent, mayor zip code intent, and kind of want to change this to like all zip code intent, and then use the rep one for House of Reps. So here's some other things we can do. These intents are going to be very similar with the same phrases in the same slots. So we can actually go right over to the JSON editor where you can see the different intents here and the samples, and we can actually just grab these and take the slot and put them in each one of ours. So let's do the slot first. So each of these needs the by zip code request. We're going to take these ones for the all because that's going to be exact. For mayor, we can do, actually I'll just do these in the UI now. So for mayor, we're going to want to do, save them. Come on, save. Mayor intent. Mayor of zip code. Mayor at zip code. We might want to also cover, in case Alexa doesn't understand, mayor is M-A-Y-O-R, so we can do mayor zip code. And then we're going to want to do the same stuff for senator. Senator of zip. Senator at zip. Zip. Senator. Oh my gosh, I spelled these two completely wrong. Senator at zip. Of zip. Probably gonna also want to add mayor zip mayor. Governor at zip. Governor of zip. Zip governor. And rep. You can get rid of these ones. Zip rep. Great. Let's save and build these. Now we're going to need to go handle those intents in our code as well. We can probably abstract this a little bit. So instead of doing this if and pulling out the zip code, we're going to be able to do this for any of them. So let's actually segment this code a little bit. So we have an intent request. I'm going to move up the help intent. Just because it's one of the cases that's not one of these ones. And then instead of just saying exactly, we're literally just going to see if we even contain the zip code. And then we can segment afterwards. So let's say if it contains zip code, we know it's one of ours that we need to do the zip for, and we should have access to the zip code. So now we can switch, let's say, we're going to have a special case if it's the all intent. If the intent request.intent.name equals all zip code intent, and else we can basically just choose who the official is and go from there. So we're going to prefix here official, switch, actually I'm going to initialize it as null. We're going to switch over the intent request intent name. And now we can basically grab which one we need and then build the response from there. So instead of saying governor, we're going to say official, and we'll pass those in. Alright, so case, let's go just grab each of these different ones. I'll split these. So if we have the rep zip code intent, we'll do the gov zip code intent, and then I'll end up adding breaks on each of these too. Case senator zip code intent, mayor, sweet. So now we need to basically create methods in our provider to go grab each one of these by the type. So we have our governor one, which is a great start. Let's just copy this for now. And we can just pass in that we need, actually we can just abstract this. Basically we just need to know the difference of this. So let's create a private async task of official, that is get official by level. And we'll take in a string level and a string zip code. So we can basically take all of this stuff, paste it, and then in this one we're going to return await get official by level zip, and we need that string, right? That's our governor. And this one is going to be the level instead. So now we just need to figure out what the level is for senator, for rep, and mayor. So let's do get local mayor, get local senator, get local rep. Now let's just figure out what those different levels are over here. Okay. We have like lieutenant governor and stuff too. I don't think we really need that. All right, U.S. senator is level country. Oh, are each of these going to be level? Okay. No, country is good. That's our senator. State treasurer, state auditor. Do we not have our House of Representatives rep? Locality. Uh-oh, these are all locality. We should check to see if the name contains mayor then in that scenario. Okay, that's fine. Let's go countrywide for senator. We might need to do something different for rep. Senator is rep. Mayor is locality. What was it? Locality? Locality. But we need to check to see that we have county sheriff is 2, 1, secretary, state auditor. Yeah, here's the thing. We're gonna have these in like the wrong order. So we should be able to check against names too. So let's actually pass it in for all of these just to be sure. Required name. Okay, so we can check where o.levels contains level and o.name, and we'll to lower it. Dot contains required name to lower. Okay, so that way now for governor, we should be able to say governor. For mayor, we can say mayor. Senator, we can say senate. And rep, I don't even think we're going to be able to do this, honestly. I'm just going to comment this out for now. Okay. So let's go add these to our interface. And I think that's good. So now in our controller, I'm going to get rid of this rep one. And we're going to say official equals await our provider governor. We'll say zip code dot value. And we're just going to do this for the other ones too. We're going to say mayor and senator. Call them at that, or email them at official.emails.first or default. Great. On the Alexa side, I'm just going to get rid of that rep zip code intent for now. And then let's publish this again, and we can just try it out right away. Alright, back over in test. Ooh, we gotta save and build this though.
I found a few skills that might help.
Echo
Do
style.
you mean test? Alright.
Build started, we gotta wait for that to finish. And after we get this working, we can go about setting up the Google Action and the chatbot stuff too, which will require us adding some more code and building some models for the inputs and outputs of those, which is fine. We'll have to do that no matter what, because the dialog flow ones are really just a pain. And then from there, we should be able to actually start looking at publishing these. All right, let's go to test. Let's make sure this all works. We might also need to swap out that slot type and create a zip code one. I'll try to look that up after, but let's say open find my rep.
Welcome to Find My Rep.
O2
You can find contact
110.
information and details about your representatives from federal to local.
Mayor.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
All right, let's figure out what the issue is here. Oh, it didn't give us a. Oh, I forget that. In the console, in the simulator, you can't type numbers. It like really throws some stuff off. So what I need to do is say open find my rep, and then we
Welcome to Find My Rep.
0.
You can find contact information and details about your representatives from federal to local. Just say your zip code. Here's what I found. Martin J. Walsh, and you can call them at 617-635-4500 or email them at mayor@boston.gov.
All right, we're gonna mute this because that is coming through super loud. You drop the desktop audio a bit too, so you guys don't have to be deafened by this stuff. Apologies for that. Okay, but look, we got the response for the mayor. Let's do the same thing now for governor.
Here's what I found. Charles D. Baker, and you can call them at 617-725-4005 or email them at constituent.services@state.ma.us. You can ask for another zip codes reps.
Okay. And we'll do senator.
I wasn't able to find anyone for that. Try asking something else.
Okay. So we got the right request there for senator zip code intent, and we got the right zip code, which is good. When we do say it all the way out, it does pick it up. So maybe we won't have to have that scenario there. But to not find the senator, let's go take a look at this. Make sure we do get U.S. Senator. That's why we were checking against the required name Senate. So back over here, we can say senator. And we'll republish it. That's great. I mean, we're able to actually get that local info and at the different levels as well, which I think is pretty useful. We need to handle the response for all of them, where we can just be like, here's all of them, and we can just iterate over each of the officials, maybe starting like after the vice president or something, but I think that'll be a good start. All right, this is published. I'm going to hit the same one again. We're just going to copy this.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
All right, didn't like something there, which is fine. We can now take this and run this locally and run it through Swagger and debug and see what the error is that we're getting. All right, check our output. Value cannot be null. All right, let's step through it. We know we're getting to our provider. Let's see. Let's make sure that we have the right levels. All right, levels is country. And name contains senator. Oh, there's more than one index here. Maybe that's the issue. Okay, it's fine. Let's hit that endpoint again and step through it. All right, we get our response. We have the office. It is senator. The indices are 2 and 3. So the official index, we're just going to grab the second one. Although I think that Yeah, that should be right. So we get the official. It's Ed Markey. He's got phone. Oh, he doesn't have emails. So we need to validate that you actually have a phone number and an email first. That's fine. Let's do that. We'll do a string builder. We'll start here. We could say if official.phones, and apparently this can be null, but we want to handle the empty case as well. So if that's explicitly true, then we want response to also add now we need to do the same thing for emails. If official.emails any is true, response plus equals and also email them at period, and then we'll also add the last sort of follow-up there. Now we'll just take that entire response. Cool. Publish that again. And let's see what we can get here. Here's the thing, though, that we might also want to consider.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Oh, we're out of the skill. Is if we have more.
Welcome to Find My Rep.
Hold on.
You can find
Let's make sure we go. If we have more than one person.
Here's what I found. Edward J. Markey. And you can call them at 202-224-2742. You can ask for another zip codes reps.
We need some spaces there. But like we have 2 senators that are coming back here. I'm wondering if we should handle like scenarios where we just have multiples. But for now, we can leave that at the first one. Let's just make sure we have spaces after these periods, and we'll publish this. For now, let's go set up the dialog flow stuff in the Google Action, and then we can abstract the response building here to get just the output string that we want, and then we can, like, even if we need to make adjustments based off what we're doing, then that's fine, and we don't really have to like worry about doing it twice in 2 different places. So like we have this Alexa controller. Let's take a look here, like what is actually specific to Alexa and what we can abstract when we start to set it up in Dialogflow. And we also still need to handle this. So the models that we get sent to us, the skill request and skill response, and the types here, these are unique to Alexa. The response strings that we send back are not, but the response builder stuff that we have is. Which means that when we're going to abstract it, we might want to have a class that we can put both in like the Dialogflow and Google controllers, and the one that we use in Alexa to like basically build the response. Now, getting the slot type is unique as well, but basically like everything else after this is not, right? This is all just like getting the actual official by the specific intent and building the type of response, which means we can abstract that as well into like an actual set of business logic for handling the request by the intent. So as long as we give them the same intent names, then we should be good. So let's start by doing this. I'm gonna go to close all these extra things. We'll go to the Dialogflow console, and we're gonna create a new agent here. So I'm gonna say new agent. We're gonna call this Find My Rep, and we'll leave the defaults. Once this is done, we need to go into fulfillment and give it the URL, just like we did on Alexa, and then we need to also start building those same intents. So same phrases, same patterns, everything like that. We're basically just going to have to duplicate the work. So I'm going to go over to fulfillment, turn on webhook. https findmyrep.azurewebsites.net/API/dialogflow. So for those who haven't joined us in the past with setting up Google Actions and Dialogflow agents, basically this is what Google uses for all of its NLUs. So similar to building the interaction model on Alexa, we build a language model here on Dialogflow, and then we choose what channels it needs to go out to. So we can do that from the integration section, where we can create a Google action, which we'll do from here. You can also do the opposite way, where you create a Google action and then spin up the Dialogflow agent for it. But there's also some other stuff in here too, and we'll look at spinning up a Twitter bot and web demo. So for example, when we do web demo, we get this URL. We can even change it to find my rep, which means that now when we go to this URL, we can start to chat with our bot once we have it all set up and spun up and talking to our endpoint. And then on the Twitter side, we need to actually go register a bot with the Twitter applications. What I'm thinking we'll do is create a new Twitter account. Also, yikes, this is coming up real soon, so sort of last chance to do it officially. And then these are actually, I think, becoming third-party supported community ones, but they are going to be removed from the official one. So maybe we need to do that one a little later just to be safe. But basically, we need to set them up on Twitter. We need to create an account, register as like a bot consumer, set up all the access token stuff, and then we're off and running. But for now, we'll stick to the Google Assistant stuff and the web demo. But let's go create those intents first, just like we did on Alexa. So I'm actually going to split screen these two just so I can side-by-side them, and we can do basically the same setup that we just did going through each one of these intents. So we're going to create an intent. We're going to call it the gov zip code intent. Now this name doesn't necessarily matter to us as much as the action name. This is what we're really going to be using to choose how we basically go forward. So we have the gov intent. If we go look at this, we need zip code governor, which we can do with examples. So if we do, how do I do this again? Let's do zip code governor. And then when we hover over this, we can create a new one. So let's see, there is one for zip code, which is great. Added as synonyms. Okay, that's fine. So let's just do as a type, right? No, wait, I just want to change the value. And that's the zip code. Cool. And we need governor of 110, and those will start to automatically pick them up as types too, which is great. And then we can say governor at 02110. Cool, let's save that. Let's go create the next one, which is the senator zip code intent. And we're going to say, senator, and it automatically gets picked up as a zip code. Makes it really easy. Senator of, save, another intent, mayor, zip code intent, mayor of that, mayor at that, save, and we'll set up the last one here. Let's see, this is the all zip code intent. Who are my representatives at zip code? Reps of zip code, government of zip code, and we can save that. Some things we're going to also have to do in these intents is actually turn on webhooks. Without it, it's going to try to use the default responses, but with it, it'll actually send requests to us. Hey Raventhorn, thanks for the follow. So now we can go back through each one of these, except this is the one I just did, and we need to flip that enable webhook on. That way it'll actually start sending requests to us once we have it set up. So we just need to go down to fulfillment on each one of them, save, back to intents, mayor, fulfillment, on, save, And then we've got one more for senator. And save. Now let's also go spin up a Google action for this. We can do this just by clicking that, see how it works on Google Assistant, or from the integration side, just like we saw there. And then once it's spun up, this is going to do a whole bunch of things. We can start to actually ask about it from the Google Actions, which is cool. Which means we also now need to actually set up that endpoint and handle all that code. We'll start by going over and giving it a display name. One thing that's unique about Google versus Alexa and other platforms similarly is that Google has unique names, meaning if I get Find My Rep right now, no one else can make an action called Find My Rep. So I already took it. It's like a domain name in that sense. For Google, you can do, for Amazon, you can have as many as you want with the same name, and it can really create conflicts for your users. But now if I go over to test, because I've taken this name, I can say talk to Find My Rep, and I'll start to hit the content. Now we need to actually write some code to handle it. So we registered it as the /dialogflow endpoint. So let's go create a new controller for that as well. So we'll say dialogflow controller, and we'll inherit from controller base, and we'll set up our route API controller. And then this is also going to be an HTTP post endpoint. And we'll say public async task. There's a couple things we're going to run into here, just so you all know, with Google and how they handle the JSON deserialization from Dialogflow, which is why we can't just return an object type. We need to return an actual response and use the JSON response or JSON result object as the output. We'll just call this handle Dialogflow request. And then from body, for now, I'll just keep this as a dynamic. Yikes, Visual Studio. Go away. That's fine. And then we're going to end up creating models for these. So, and we'll say Dialogflow request. So if we go look at the Dialogflow output, we were doing this last time on the last stream on Wednesday for the Warzone controller, creating the endpoint for that for Dialogflow, and Google has a Dialogflow SDK for C#, but it's super difficult to work with. Let me sort of show you what I mean. Dialogflow C#. When you get to using it, and this is the NuGet package, when you get to using it for Google Assistant, you can't just return like the base like simple text output, and it's fine. We can do that fine with this SDK. You have to return a specific payload object within the response for Google that then has simple responses in it, so that it knows how to do text to speech and everything else, and that becomes super difficult unless we can find an example of it. That would be much simpler. But so far it's been really difficult. So if we look at the quick start, they'll even show you in these scenarios, like this is what we need as the baseline response. This works fine for the chatbot outputs because they handle the abstraction of the actual output to send. The challenge, this is the client one. I don't want this. I need the other one. There we go. Oh, come on. Give me that getting started guide. This guy probably is going to run into the same thing when he has it set up. Yeah, so here's an example of what's sent up to us. We get the query results, we get the text of what the person said, and then we also get like the intents that were processed from it. So we can get the display name and the action name and stuff, which is what we'll end up using. I actually think it might be in query result, like the action name. When we start to use it, we can't get the request from the body like we just set up. We actually have to do this stuff where we pull it from the stream. And then get all the values out and everything else, which is frustrating. And then looking at this response, we have a new webhook response, and we can basically like set the fulfillment text, and that's like the bare minimum you need for chatbots. So you can even see, like in this example, we'll probably get there, you get fulfillment text. But for Google Assistant and Google Actions, you have to have this payload object set up, and it needs to be this is a sub object, then you have a Google property in it, and then that has all like the Google specific things. And it becomes really difficult to do that because their SDK doesn't have the Google object stuff in it. It just has like structs and strings and stuff like that. So instead, what I think we're going to do is just skip over that nonsense. We're going to go right to the dialog flow JSON references in the response format, and we can just go from there. So let's see. Just want the JSON format. So we'll just create the models for what we really need here. Let's see. This is not what I need. This is pretty useless. Yeah, this is the one. So yeah, here's that payload object, and we need Google, and we need to set expects user response, and you need to have rich response with items, then the simple response, then you have the text to speech. So like basically this string and this string can be the same, and like that, like, but we need all of this nonsense to get there. But you can also then customize for the different other channels that they support, which is cool. So let's go make some objects for this and the request objects. Although we could probably just pull in the request objects they have. So let's do that. So I'm gonna go add the dialog flow dependency anyway, and then we'll just see what we can actually use from it, if it's gonna be a pain or not. Install. Yeah. Now in models, I'm going to create a new folder here called Dialogflow. Dialogflow. And let's create the basics that we need. So we need a Dialogflow response. And we need a Google payload. Unless there's another SDK I'm missing here for Google Assistant, but I don't think so. We can check real quick. Let's see if there's something. Actions on Google. Well, that's not helpful. Lame. Okay. We're giving up. We're going to make the models. So I'm going to side by side these with this. Basically, we need models for each of these things. Not necessarily the fulfillment messages for now. But definitely for the payload and this inner one and these responses. Either that or we use dynamics and just get sloppy with it for now, which for the time being might be a little bit faster maybe. Now that I'm thinking about it, just give up on types for a little bit. Yeah, actually I kind of want to do that. Fine. So let's do this. We need to return this response. So we can say response dynamic response equals fulfillment text equals hello world. Say new. And we'll even return new JSON result of response. Okay, so we have fulfillment text. We need to do payload equals new, and here we need to say Google equals new, expect user response equals true, rich response items new dynamic array with a simple response, and finally text to speech equals hello world. Now we can wrap all this nonsense up into a nice clean method where we only have to worry about this in one spot. Similar to the response builder like .ask and .tell, maybe we need to do the same thing. Let's just try this. We're going to run it locally and just make sure we get the right response. I want to make sure it's all camel cased and everything, and then we're good to go. Sweet. I mean, that looks like the right setup. So let's try to publish it. And see if we can't hit it from Google Assistant, just get that hello world response. All right. In test, if we say talk to Find My Rep.
Let's get the test version of Find My Rep.
Ugh.
Good day. What can I do for you today?
We're going to mute this. We need to do the same thing on the welcome intent, that pre-generated one for us. Default welcome intent. We need to turn on the webhook call. Otherwise, we're going to get all this nonsense. So fulfillment, enable webhook, save. We should do the same for fallback as well. Delete, fulfillment, enable, save. All right, let's refresh this. Hopefully this will finish training. Let's say talk to Find My Rep. I just want hello world to come back. Ah, we did it. We got a hello world. I have this muted, by the way, so we don't need to hear it. Now we can also hit the web chat if we pull that back up. All right, so if we go here and I say 02110 governor. Oh, this is probably still spinning up. Agent settings page, Google Cloud API. Probably missing something here. Use Cloud API. Yeah. Is it just missing? It might just still be spinning up. I know sometimes it takes a while. That's fine. We know we hit it from Google, which is good. Okay. Now, let's start abstracting our code, right? We have all this stuff in the Alexa controller. We need to have the ability to build certain responses out. We need to handle the intents the same way. So, and we need to get the slot value. So really what we should do is have a service in here. I'm going to create a folder for services. And our service basically should take in an intent name, a zip code, and it should return the string response that we want. And I think that will be good. So let's say we have an government civic info response service. Right, so we need to take in a public string, so that's what we're going to return as the response output that we want. We should say get response for the given intent and the given zip code. Now we can just grab most of this from the controller at this point, so like once we have this zip code, we can do this. And we'll end up returning the response there. Okay, so if zip code, and get rid of all this stuff, is that. If the intent is that, pull in these. Instead, now we're going to also want to inject the provider into this service rather than our controller. So if we go to the Alexa controller, we can grab this, pull in our namespace, and then also generate the constructor. So now we've got our civic info provider. Down here, we're going to just return response. Right, so now we can switch on intent, and this needs to be an async task. Async. Get rid of all these dot values, we don't really need that. Don't need to return the response builder stuff, that's Alexa specific. Just need the string. end. I think we're just missing some closing braces. All right. At the very end of this, we'll just return null if we don't have something else. We still need to finish this over them. Okay, now let's go refactor our Alexa endpoint, right? So we still want to handle like the Amazon specific stuff like launch request and the help intent, but we can probably put all these strings into here as different methods as well, just so we get the same string no matter what service we're on. But for now, when we're inside this is where we can start to worry about getting the specific values. So we can basically get rid of all this stuff. Say response equals await. We need to inject this, which means we should also create an interface for it. Switch this to interface. We'll go through all the injection stuff again, but we're going to do this for now. Right? So now we need to inject this guy in our Alexa controller instead of this guy. So we'll say private read only Civic Info Response Service. Civic, say Info Response Service. Generate the constructor for it. So now we can say get response async for intent request.intent.name. Come on. Request intent name and zip code.value. Now that's much simpler. Now basically we just need to just have this same sort of business logic on the Google side, but first I want to take these responses and also add them as methods on our response service. So we need welcome message, help message, and fallback message. So let's do those. We'll say task, actually these can probably just be string, get welcome message, string get help message, and string get fallback message. And now if we go over here, we need to make sure this is actually implementing it. Implement it, and I'm going to just copy each of these out. So we've got our fallback one. Return this. Let's get our welcome message. And return that. And lastly, our help message. And return that. Great. Now let's go add these here. So we're going to say info welcome, info help, and info fallback. Sweet. Oops. Got two lines of the same thing. Great. So now we just need to do the same sort of thing in our dialog flow controller. We need to know if it's the welcome intent, then we should use the same sort of like get your welcome message. If it's the help intent, then we should get the help message. And if not, we should basically pass it into this get response async where we need to get the zip code out of the slots. So what we can do to try that is over here, if I try to say like hello, come on, why isn't this set up? We can try it on the action side too. Alright, so if we look at these, we get the query result action. This is what we're going to be looking at for each of our other intents. When we hit the other ones that are the like governor by zip code one, that action is what we input in that subfield. So this is our welcome one. So let's do this. We can say in our dialog flow controller, var intent name equals dialog flow request dot query result dot action. I think that's the case. Query result action. Yep. Let's just pass in these. And then I'm also going to create a private method here. Private dynamic ask string response. Output text. So then we can say, get rid of this for now. Actually, we're going to want to keep that. Okay, so if intent name equals input.welcome, then we need a dynamic response equals null ahead of this. Then response equals ask, and we need to inject our this thing so we can start to get those responses. Private read only, one of these. Info response service. Generate the constructor. We're flying now. Okay. We need info get welcome. Right? At the very end of this, we also want to say if response is null, then response equals ask info get fallback. Okay. Now else if intent name contains zip code, right? Same sort of logic there. Then we need to get the zip code slot, and we need to pass in the request to our info thing and build that whole thing out. So we can say, where do we get our slots from? Let's try this. Governor of 02110. Something went wrong. Oh, we need to still be inside of this request. Governor of 02110. Okay, we can expand this, scroll down. Okay, so we need parameters at zip-code, basically. So this should be a dictionary. Hopefully, we can get that properly. I might need to go change the name just to make it a little easier for us. Let's see what we can do. Var zip code equals dialog float request query result parameters at zip code. We want to say response string equals await that get response intent name zip code, and then we're going to return, and we'll say not return but response equals ask response string. Great. I'm going to run this locally, and I think I can take this JSON from the Google console as well, and we can try to paste that in and see what we get. I'm going to actually debug it straight away as well, so let's see what we can do here. All right, try it out. Oh, immediate 500. Oh, duh, we didn't actually set up our dependency injection for our Civic service. So just like we did earlier when we were injecting or registering our scoped provider as for the interface, and that we need to do the same thing for the service we just created. So we can say add scoped iCivic info response service, and we want Civic info response service. So now we should be able to hit that endpoint. Alright, we're on our breakpoint. Let's step through. Do we have an intent name? We do. That's great. Okay. It's not welcome. It does not contain zip. So I think it's technically coming back as an object. Should say toString for both of these. Oh, you know, we're probably not gonna, yeah, actually we should be able to do contains there now because it's stringified. Alright, step through. Okay, so we do contain it. Oh, we should just string it ahead of time. Okay, can we get zip code? We got the zip code. We should just string all of these values. Alright, let's do this. We'll just string up here. That way we don't need to here. And we'll just string those. So now these are guaranteed strings. Or guaranteed. I mean, we still don't have the type safety. Alright, let's just run it through. Send it. Sweet, we're getting officials. We got Charlie Baker, governor. Alright, let's do this now. Let's publish it again. And we'll try to hit it from Google with some of those real requests as well. Publish. Alright, we're over here in the test one. I'm going to refresh. We're going to open it again. We should get our welcome message when we open it. And we should be able to say like the governor of 02110 or 02110 governor. 02110 governor. Charles Baker. 02110 mayor. Oh, something crashed there that it didn't like. Let's see. Did we not set up the mayor one on Dialogflow? Mayor, zip code intent. Mayor. Webhook. Mayor zip code intent. Oh, you know what? I don't think we set up the action. Yeah, that's why. We needed that. Let's go make sure we did it to the other ones as well. All zip code intent needs to have the same action name. Governor worked because we did it. That's why. And senator needs it probably as well. Alright. Now we should be able to get these to work too. Once they're done training anyway. Okay, let's try it again. Open it up. 02110 mayor. Marty Walsh. 02110 senator. Awesome. Alright, let's see if we can finally hit this from the chatbot as well. And then after that, I think we'll take a short break and then come back and see if we can't either get these published or spin them up in some of these other places. If you have any other like bot locations you'd want to see it, put it in the chat and we'll come back and build them. See, agent does not have Google Cloud API credentials, but we 100% do. Just gonna turn this off and on again. Liar. Settings. Discord bot would be fun, yeah. Problem is with the Discord bot is that it needs to like be explicitly added to channels and be kind of in this scenario where we're just trying to kind of raise awareness and make your local government more accessible. It's not like the ideal place to put it, but we can always give it a shot. I will say the Discord bot is going to be essential for what we're going to be doing with the Warzone controller once we get that finished up. Okay. Do I need to add a service account? Is that why? No. Don't need that. Let's see what we get when we look up this error. That doesn't feel right. Maybe we do need to create a service account. Alright, I'm going to pull this over here and spin up a service account. Okay. Now let me ask. There we go. That was fast. Sweet. Senator. Hell yeah. Alright, spin this back over here. Awesome. So, we're able to hit it from Alexa and Google Assistant and a chatbot. We can look at some of these other channels on the integration side that we could spin up too. See, I know Facebook Messenger might be disabled soon. They said Twitter. Okay, Twitter is. Let's see which ones are getting removed. That way we can plan ahead. I'm not sure why they're shutting all these down. We could make a Facebook bot, and we could try to make a Twitter one real quick. If not, we can always do it using different APIs too. Well, that'll be fun. Okay, anyway, I'm going to be right back. Give me like 2 minutes here. I'm out of water, so I need to go get something to drink. And then we'll look at getting these skills, the skill published, the Google Action published, and then start looking at some of the other chatbot stuff too. So should be exciting. We should at least have it in the hands of the Amazon and Google reviewers within the next like 15 minutes or so. And then hopefully people can start using it pretty soon. And if not, we've always got the chatbot. I mean, we can iframe this bad boy in there wherever we want just by embedding it or just sending people over here. So yeah, anyway, I'll be right back. Give me like 2 to 5 minutes and we'll get back into it. All right, welcome back. So where we left off is we just basically validated everything's working on Alexa, everything's working on Google Assistant, and we've got everything working on Dialogflow for the chatbot stuff. So we can also start to spin up some other services and other integrations that we might need in some of the other chatbot environments. So there's basically a few things we can do from here. We can go actually publish the Alexa skill, go through the publishing process and the Google action. We can start to spin up some more chatbot environments, so try to create a Twitter bot, Facebook Messenger bot, something like that. Or even just spin up a website to put this thing on it. Actually, no, we need to finish this thing for the all zip code intent. We actually haven't done that yet. So let's take a look at that. This is going to be important to handle here in our all zip code intent in our Civic info response. So what we're going to actually want to do is get the full response from the Civic info that we can pull from the provider. Oops. So instead, we just need to get local Civic info rather than getting a specific one. And here we'll pass in zip code again. So with this Civic info, we basically need to iterate over each of it and like provide all of the details for the different positions you have, basically for each of these. I don't know if I want to use all of them or if I want to just specifically like grab each one of these. Like if we go look at this get official by level, like if we can basically like just do this for each of the ones that we care about, then that would be sort of ideal. I almost think that we should just make this public and iterate over it for the ones that we care about. Like if we just grab these three, or maybe we should say like all your senators, or trying to think of what the most useful response would be there to a person who's like, who can I contact? You know what I mean? Like if you have thoughts, like if you were using this and you asked like, who represents me at my zip code, what would you want to have sent back to you? Like, would you expect it to just be like one of these specific offices, or would you want like a list of literally everybody and their contact info? Or would you rather be like prompted to say the specific one you're looking for? I just don't really know if I have the best sort of user experience answer there. But maybe we just start with one and see how it goes. So what if we just basically grab all of them and just make it like bottom up, I guess. I really wish that the output from this, where'd it go? I think I lost my tab for what I was using here. Keep this over here. Yeah, I think I lost my tab there. That's fine. I wish that the officials object like actually had the office in it. Like if you look at the official, we get like the address and channels and email. Like these channels are like their Twitter account or Facebook account, what their party is, phone numbers, photo URLs, like what their websites are. But like, why can't I also just get what the office is in here instead of having to like look up both? Because we can, like if we look at the response that we get, if we go to this type, like we get the offices and the officials, and this is how we're looking it up sort of backwards. And then the offices has like the official indices, which then like has the index of the position of the person from the officials array. Like, it just seems overkill. Like I wish I could just get a normalized output that sort of had that cleaner, but I mean, we got to work with what we have here. So if we iterate over the offices, we could like skip president and vice president because those aren't going to be super useful. But I don't even know if like certain city council ones will. But let's just do that. Let's basically, we're going to iterate over the offices. For each one of them, we're going to go get all the officials, and we're just going to like build them all into these massive responses. So we've got the civic info. Let's do for each office in civic info.offices. And we basically need to start building our response string. So let's say our response equals empty string. We're going to say, actually, here are all of your representatives and their offices. And we're just going to go line after line here. Okay, so for each office, let's say if office dot name contains, let's do to lower just to be safe. To lower contains president, like of any kind. We're just going to skip it. We don't need to, I don't think it's going to be as useful to just have every single person hear the vice president and president's info. We all know who they are. They're not going to actually be contactable necessarily as much as your senators are, or your mayor, or your governor, or even your city officials will. Now that we've skipped those, we can grab the rest. So let's say for each office, we're going to now get each of the officials for their offices. So let's say response plus equals for the office of office.name, you can contact, and then we'll say for each office dot each var official index in office.indices. We'll say we need to get the official, so we'll say var official equals civic info officials at official index. Right, and now we can basically just build up these responses for each one of these. For like, here's what I found. Oh my gosh. We'll probably need to want to check null too. If official index is null, continue that loop. We probably also need to handle a null case. Basically what we're just saying here with that null coalescing stuff is like, if this is null, then we're basically going to try to iterate over an empty list and then continue on. It's just saving us the hassle of having to do an extra if statement above it, because that can just be annoying. Okay, so we get the official. We want to say response plus equals let's just say official dot name, and response plus equals you can contact them. We're going to leave that, and then we're going to say if official dot phones dot any equals true, then response plus equals by phone at official dot phones dot first or default. And if official dot emails any is true, response plus equals by email at official dot emails first or default. Okay. And then down here, we'll just return response. Okay, just sort of double checking here. If we have the all zip code intent, go get all the civic info by that zip code. Here are all the representatives in their offices. Go through each one. For the office of, like, U.S. Senate, you can contact and then we go over each of the actual officials, and let's say it's like Senator Elizabeth Warren. You can contact them. We should do it this way, that way we can get the period in there. You can contact them by phone at blah blah blah, and by email by blah blah blah. Okay. And then at the very end, we'll slap that on as well. Alright, let's publish this, and let's try it out on Alexa and Google. We'll see how it goes here. Oh, you know what we need to do? We need to do, in Dialogflow, under intents for the all zip code one, we should just add the zip as one of the slots, or one of the utterances alone, and we'll save that. Alright. So if I go to test here in the Alexa console and re-sign in, because it likes to sign me out sometimes, even when I say keep me signed in. And we'll say open find my rep.
Welcome to Find My Rep. You can find contact information and details about your representatives from federal to local. Here are all of your representatives and their offices. For the office, U.S. Senator, you can contact Edward J. Markey. You can contact them by phone at 202-224-2742. Elizabeth Warren.
Alright.
You can contact them by phone at 202-224.
Alright, so we definitely got a whole bunch of info there, but it kind of sounds broken in the language. We got some like run-ons here, like offices. For the office of U.S. Senator, you can contact, and then right at the end of the phone, it doesn't really break here. So we need to add some punctuation and stuff in this response provider. You can contact blank. You want a space there. Phone. At the end of it, we'll just add a period. Alright. Let's try that same thing again. Let's unmute it to hear how it sounds.
Edward J. Markey. You can contact them by phone at 202-224-2742. Elizabeth Warren. You can contact them by phone at 202-224-4543. For the office, Governor of Massachusetts, you can contact Charles D. Baker. You can contact them by phone at 617-725-4005, by email at constituent.services@state.ma.us. For the office, Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts, you can contact.
Alright. Let's make sure it looks alright on Google. So if I just say O2110, hopefully that gives me the full thing. Oh, we're out of the app, so we gotta get back into it. O2110. Unmute.
Here are all of your representatives and their offices. For the office, U.S. Senator, you can contact Edward J. Markey. You can contact them by phone at 202-224-2742. Elizabeth Warren. You can contact them by phone at 202.
Alright. Looks pretty good to me. I'm going to commit all this. That way it'll be in our GitHub repo. We'll say work on Dialogflow and better responses. And I think we should publish these and see if we can't get through in the next couple days. So let's go take a look at the Alexa publishing process. So over in the Alexa developer console, we have to go to distribution, and basically we have to run through verification. Now we also need to fill out all this store information, so we give it its public name, find my rep, descriptions, images, all that. icons, categories, any privacy URLs or anything like that. And then in the certification side, which we should probably kick off now, it's going to run automated error checks where it's basically just going to bombard our API with specific things and also check against our actual distribution stuff. So all of these are like, we need to fill out all this stuff in the distribution tab. And one of these is saying that we don't have enough sample phrases provided. I don't know what. Oh, that's also in the description. So these are all description stuff, not so much on the functional side. But we'll have to rerun it once we get all of this stuff set up. So let's go set that up. In the distribution side, let's start filling out our details. So one sentence description. Ask me for your local government's representation information. This includes their names, positions, phone numbers, and emails. Make a difference. You can use this skill to look up the details of government officials so that you may contact them via phone or email. You can ask for all of your reps' information or ask by a specific position such as mayor, governor, senator, etc. We hope you'll use this skill to help make a difference in your community by reaching out to your local and federal governments, local, state, and federal governments to make sure they support your beliefs. Alright, what's new? Initial release. Alright, so you have to say Alexa, open, find my rep as an example. You can also add some more phrases for those one-shots that I was talking about earlier. So we can say Alexa, ask find my rep who is the governor of 02110. And then we need to provide skill icons. We can go to the icon builder real quick just to see if there's anything here. I mean, actually, this is pretty good. Basically, this is a cool tool by Amazon just to help you build an icon if you don't have anything. It's like a whole bunch of info from, or icons from like Icon Awesome or something like that. But then we can combine it with like background colors and everything else. So I feel like this people one is a good one. And then for the background, we currently have a gradient. But let's see if we can't just adjust it a little bit. That one's pretty good. Download. Sweet. Now we can extract this. Open that up. And then over here, we basically just need the small one and the large one. So drop that one and drop that one. Alright, category, education and reference. Say government, representatives, contact, stuff like that. We don't need policy URLs. We can save and continue. No, we don't make purchases. We do not collect your personal information. You're not targeted at children under 13. We do not contain advertising. And we need testing instructions. So this only works for locations in the United States. You can ask for an official by zip code. So for example, say 02110 or 02110 mayor. Save and continue. Now we should get kicked over to availability. We want to make it public. We're only going to make it available in the US, simply because this is only for US citizens. So we just check off United States, and then we can save and continue. And now we can rerun the validation. So this is going to check all that information that we just looked at, and then it's also going to run that functional validation like I was saying, where it's going to bombard our endpoint with a few different samples, make sure we did everything right, and then we can submit it and check back after to see if we're good to go. But this can take a few minutes. So while this is running, we can go do basically the same thing we just did over on the Google side, and we can take like the same descriptions and everything else. So let's go do that. So over on the actions on Google side, if I refresh this and go into find my rep, and to deploy, so this is where we need to fill in those same descriptions. So from here, I'm going to take that, I'm going to take that, this is too long. What's the limit on this? I can use this action. Oh, I copied the long one there. That's why. Is this still too long? Just skip it for now. Ask, find my rep. Who is the mayor at 02110? These are optional. We can skip. This needs to be 192 by 192 for our icon. Developer stuff, I'll put in my personal things, and we don't need a privacy policy, I hope. $100 characters. Alright. Let's see. Actually, we have it over here. We're at 146. We need to cut down a pretty decent amount there. Governments. Rep information. That's closer. Contact them and make a difference. Boom. Alright, we need an icon. So we can take the same icon we just made, we just need to resize it. So I'm going to go over to my handy dandy pixeler. And we're going to open our larger one and resize it to 192, right? That's what it was. 192, perfect. Save it. That was stupid. Perfect. All right, contact details. I'm gonna swing it over here and put my own email. Alexander Net. We need a privacy URL. Alright, let's swing this back over. So we need to have a privacy policy basically where we just say we're not going to do anything. So we can copy this sample document. Go to File, make a copy. Replace the document with your app name. File, make a copy. Say, find my rep privacy policy. Delete these instructions. Okay. So this should be the find my rep privacy policy. Wait, this is just empty. Fill out the document with your oh, man. I might just need to go grab a sample online. Use Google Sites for privacy policy. Just want a sample one. Let's see, Google Actions sample privacy policy. Find my rep. God, I hope this doesn't make me pay for it at the end. Zip code, technically. App type. Open source. It's none. Individual. Can I do it now? No, this is for mobile apps, but still. What if I just do none? Damn it. Include links to third-party services. No. There we go. Okay, we can still do the thing where we're hosting it in here just because that's what they want us to do. Go away. I'll just put an email in here. I guess I have to put my public email. Sweet, share. Give me a public URL. Anyone with the link on the internet can view this. There we go. Here's your stupid privacy policy. Alright, category. Education and reference. No alcohol and tobacco. That should be pretty obvious. No. Save. Boom. We are ready. Alex done. That's where we're making it. Alex Almost done. Save. Release. Create a release. Yeah. Alright, let's see if we pass this, and we ran into validation issues on Alexa. Example phrases should contain the sample utterances that you've provided. Skills example phrase should not contain the sample utterance you've provided. For example, Alexa, ask my rep. Does not contain your sample. What? Okay. We can. That's just going to be some updates on our interaction model and in that listing. Tell me the governor at zip code. So now over here, I'm going to say to tell me the governor at that. Now we can save and continue. And now we can rerun validation again. Alright, cool. So our Google one is in review. They usually turn these around in a couple days. Yeah, they even say here 2 to 3 business days. So we'll see how that goes. And then let's wrap up the Alexa one and then talk about what else we can do here. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. Alright, so let's go look at these Dialogflow integrations again. So we have our web demo, which is great. We can just take this and we can share this around, tweet it all day, tell people to go look up their governor information. We can embed this if anyone wants to do that on their website. You can just take this URL. I'm going to put it in chat real quick. And I frame it in, and you can even do that sort of allows microphone so that you can talk to it. The issue that we're going to have with some of these other ones is that Dialogflow is going to be deprecating like a bunch of these. But I do think a Twitter bot would be really useful right now to be able to just DM a bot and do the lookup, or even Facebook Messenger as a bot, maybe add it. I'm not sure. And then someone in chat mentioned earlier to do a Discord bot. I haven't done a Discord bot yet. I definitely want to, but I think that it's not necessarily like the right move right now for this, because this should be like very public facing to just hit anywhere, right? Like we're trying to publish a full Alexa skill into Google Action so that anyone can go ask about their rep and get their information. Okay, this is still lame. Contextualized response. Tell me the governor. What do you want to know? Fine, we're just gonna get rid of the other stupid phrase then. There, you happy? You can open it. Okay. Awesome. We're just gonna wait for this to run. Let's go back over here, talk about these a little bit more. So we could always use like a different tool. It doesn't have to go through Dialogflow. I mean, I'm just thinking like we already have all that code though, and I really wish that we could just flip the switch on this Twitter bot and it wouldn't be an issue. Like we could run it now and it would literally be good for less than a week. As they're saying, it'll shut down on June 6th and it'll stop if you don't take action. So maybe we just need to read through this and see how we can still support those integrations. Okay, so they're going to be your live bots that use these will stop working unless you take action. The implementations of these integrations have moved to open source. To continue to use these integrations, follow the instructions in the GitHub repository. So maybe we can still get a Twitter bot out of this. But I'm also thinking it's probably going to take us a little more than the hour we have left on this stream. So I think instead what I want to do is focus on, oh yeah, we have to like self-host this. I don't know if I want to do that. Yeah, this is definitely going to take a little bit longer than we have. Okay, let's do this. Let's wrap up the Alexa skill publishing, and then we'll circle back on Wednesday. Take a look at the state of these two, the Google Action and the Alexa skill. We can see if they're ready to go, if they're up in the skill store and action store, and we can start talking about them, and then adding some more channels to it, Twitter bots, Discord bots, Facebook Messenger bots, other chat bots, stuff like that. And otherwise, like, depending on our timing, we might just start switching back to doing the Warzone controller if we have this out, unless you guys have any other ideas of other ways we can be more impactful using conversational AI and these different sort of voice outputs and voice first tech to be more meaningful. But let's go ahead and do this. Let's submit this for review. And we should be good to go. So that's great. We're in review now on the Alexa skill store and the Google Actions directory. So a couple days, we'll take a look at these. So Wednesday at I think 6 p.m. Eastern, I'll be streaming again. But we'll take a look at these on Wednesday, see where we're at, make any fixes if we need to. I think we might need to do some extra validation on the Alexa side to make sure that it is our skill hitting it and not something else. I think that's one of their requirements, to make sure no one's sort of like backdooring the skill, which right now we're not really protected against. We'll then also document it, teach other people how to build this stuff a little bit more from the GitHub repository, and then we'll get back to the Warzone controller. So where we left off there, just as another sort of recap, is we are waiting for the Arduino Leonardo to come in. I should be getting it Wednesday, but it might be Wednesday evening, where we can register it as a USB device and then have the two talking back and forth. So my plan with that is to get that working with the Warzone controller, hop in Warzone, play a couple games with it with everyone talking to their Alexas. We also are almost at the submission process for that skill and action, so if we can get those submitted on Wednesday, that would be ideal. That way in a week, so next Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern, we can come back, have this published in public, the Warzone controller published in public, and then I want to build a Twitch bot so that in chat you guys can issue commands to move the character in Warzone. And then in the end, what I'm trying to do with that piece of technology is turn what we're going to be doing in Warzone with very basic commands into an actual, like, fully accessible virtual keyboard. That way people who don't necessarily have fine motor skills or control over keyboards with their hands can use any of the virtual assistants that they use, whether they're an Alexa user, a Google user, Cortana user, Bixby user. I don't care. I want those people to be able to tell their keyboard to type something and for it to just type stuff. So that's the end goal. And we're using the Warzone stuff as an experiment, and doing it in a distributed way too, which is a little different. But anyway, I think I'm going to end it there. We made some great progress. We built an Alexa skill that allows us to ask for our local reps details. We built a Google Action for the same thing, and we have a Dialogflow chatbot. So pretty great day. We did that all in under 3 hours from start to finish. Hopefully you guys can start to see how easy it is to do all this stuff even in .NET without the official tools. And yeah, I'll see you all on Wednesday where we'll check up on this stuff, wrap it up, and then start to wrap up the Warzone controller as well. So hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I'm going to sign off. So I'll see you Wednesday at 6 p.m.